Welcome back to your Covenant Church Planter Training digital learning experience. As you'll remember from the orientation, there are two primary frameworks that you will need as you begin planting. The first is the 7 systems of a healthy church, which we covered briefly in the orientation. And the second is our stage-by-stage planting strategy called the 4-stage launch. There are 2 videos to watch this week. This video is going to provide you with an introduction to the 4-stage launch, and the next video will give you a deeper dive into stage 1. We are going to space out the video training and cohort discussions around the other stages throughout the year to hopefully align with the stage you might find yourself in at that point. Right now, many of you are in stage 1. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jason Charles, who will give us an introduction to the 4-stage launch strategy.
Hey everyone, I get the privilege of leading our conversation about the 4-stage launch. I hope this process has been encouraging and applicable to where you're at. My name is Jason Charles, and I'm the lead pastor of City Collective Church located in Vancouver, Canada. I moved in July 2017 with a team of 6 amazing individuals from Calgary and planted in September 2018. And we learned firsthand the need for clear calling, vision, and commitment to the process. Process matters. Planning matters. And I wholeheartedly believe that the Holy Spirit guides us in the planning and meets us in the process. I remember the early days of dreaming about the church that we wanted to be. Passionate ideas and a central vision that was going to transform our community with the good news of Jesus. Those were exciting conversations. But it also became evident that this was not a short process. We had picked up and moved our lives from Calgary to Vancouver, about a 12-hour drive away. Think of it along the lines of Texas North to the Pacific Northwest. And these were not the same places. So something as simple as time needed to be given to acclimatizing ourselves to the place and people. The question became, though, how do we effectively do this? How can we have this time be intentional and formative while still creating space for the Holy Spirit to lead and guide our hearts and intentions? The 4-stage launch became a roadmap for those questions to be answered. It helped build momentum in the early days, and it made even the seasons that required a bit more patience effective. When I reflect on moments within those different stages, the preparedness that we felt allowed us to focus on the things that we knew were important. Genuine connection, shared trust, passionate vision of what this community could be, and most importantly, people coming together to discover life in Jesus. We saw different personalities can lean in different directions throughout this process, but we learned that a unified vision was solidified by a coherent plan. It went as far as becoming a value for us. Creativity happens within constraint. So let's take a look at each stage in broad strokes. Each stage lasts approximately 3 to 4 months and is defined by clear, healthy missional benchmarks. Your benchmarks are based upon the end goal of financial self-sustainability. So your specific benchmarks may be slightly different from the general baseline that we'll share in our training videos. Your coach and conference staff will help you determine your specific benchmarks for each stage, and we'll remind you of this in each subsequent video. So let's start with stage 1. The goal of stage 1 is to gather like-minded, diversely gifted, missionally motivated people into a cohesive team. For us, stage 1 was deeply formational. Everything was centered around the table. Quite literally, a table that we found online that was big enough for us to host 12 people. And that is exactly what we did. Seemingly every day for almost 9 months, we invited new friends, coworkers, neighbors, strangers for a meal. And it wasn't always pretty or put together, but there was an intentionality of invitation that fostered genuine conversations and relationships. We were new in the area, so it felt odd at times, but our group of 6 that moved together made a commitment to reach out. And over the course of 9 months, we had about 250 unique individuals around that table. No pretense or expectation of church or team, but that was exactly where the beginnings of them were formed. The table became more than a space of shared fellowship, but a space to explore Jesus together, a space of the divine. That original table ended up making the rounds in our church family for years to come. Next, let's talk about stage 2. In stage 2, you begin holding public worship services, but not every week just yet. Instead, you practice a rhythm of worship services, launch team gatherings, and outreach events. The goal of stage 2 is to reach and gather more people to the new church, to develop effective ministry systems, and to practice what you'll eventually become by hosting your very first public worship service. After establishing relationships in the community, we began to hold more focused gatherings in launching the church itself. For us, we started with info nights at a local pub, monthly outreach events, and launch team gatherings on Sunday mornings. We would often invite those interested in joining the team to those Sunday team gatherings. And they were always someone that we'd already shared one, if not multiple meals with throughout stage one. Those team gatherings transitioned into worship services and eventually into what we see in stage 3, full weekly worship gatherings. As you move to weekly services in stage 3, the goal is to continue to reach and gather, to refine your systems and get them right, and to act as if this was your hard launch grand opening season. When I think back upon those early days, one of the best pieces of encouragement I can give to you is to live and lead from grace. It's going to be chaotic. And maybe it doesn't look exactly like you'd hoped for. And perhaps some of the Sundays leave you wanting, but keep the vision and mission that you have established with the team in the forefront. Lead the charge in placing value and weight on that which you want your new church community to uphold. Celebrate the work that the Spirit is doing in those spaces and never lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing. By the end of stage 3, I wholeheartedly believe that you will move into stage 4 fairly seamlessly. So finally, stage 4, and it's a formal launch for accelerated growth and impact, unfettered outreach and evangelism, and the development of robust ministry systems. I know I said stage 4 will arrive seamlessly, but that wasn't exactly our story. We planned to launch in September 2018 and found the summer to be challenging. Once that fall arrived, it felt like everything happened at once. Team development, marketing, discipleship pathways, technical purchasing, and development. And then we launched publicly and officially on September 23rd, 2018. What a weekend. I remember nerves, excitement, stress, and gratitude all wrapped up in myself and the team, but we felt ready. We had prayed for that day. We had committed ourselves to one another and invited our community and grabbed hold of a vision to reach our city with the good news of Jesus. There are many people who are part of our church today whose first Sunday was that launch Sunday where they found a church to call home. We had done the necessary work of systems, purchasing, training, and practices alongside team's discipleship and prayer. And then with confidence, we were able to follow up with all the new faces to invite them into the life of the church. Whether that was serving on a team, joining a community group, or signing up for an outreach opportunity, we saw God bless our community right away as we enter stage 4. The 4-stage launch is a clearly defined, gradual approach to moving towards a fully public grand opening. To borrow a phrase from the recovery community, it works if you work it. For those of you who prefer to move cautiously and carefully, the clarity of this plan will serve to keep you on track and intentionally building and capturing momentum, making decisions to move the plant forward into the next stage. What is more often the case is that planters, including myself, actually become very tempted to rush this process, especially to move to quick weekly public worship services. You might hear this critique or pressure from your launch team even, for whom the church is often just a weekly Sunday gathering. Please don't give in to this pressure. The viability and sustainability of your church may very well depend on your ability to resist this temptation. Let me explain. Just like with the 7 systems, we can turn to the human body and the process of human development. Hopefully this is a helpful analogy. There's a reason why a woman doesn't get pregnant and immediately give birth the next day. The natural process from conception to gestation to birth gives the baby the best possible chance of survival. If you think of the moment God put the vision for this new church in your heart and mind as its conception, and your grand opening launch day as the birth of your church, the 4-stage launch is like pregnancy and gestation. In the womb, the baby develops the key systems it needs to thrive so that when it is born, it can breathe on its own. If the baby comes too soon, there is serious risk and it could die. If the baby's birth weight is low, this is incredibly dangerous. Following the 4-stage launch and delaying birth until the baby is fully developed gives your church the best possible chance of survival. Now, this doesn't mean that your launch team can't gather together to worship God, pray together, read the scriptures, and even hear you teach. Just remember that the strain and stress of holding public worship gatherings in the early stages will overtax the system, similar to a premature birth. So embrace the process. Celebrate the landmarks you reach, and remember that benchmarks are your friends. They allow you to know when it's healthy to move to the next stage of development, much like monitoring your vital signs to remain healthy. I know for myself, I can be and have been guilty of wanting to move the process along at my speed. And I found that often the cost of doing so is people around me. The end goal isn't to host weekly public worship services. The goal is to be part of what the Spirit is doing, to see our communities and cities transformed by the good news and people flourishing in their relationships with Jesus. One of your assignments this week is to reflect on how your personality will interact with this clearly defined gradual approach. Without this strategy, would you be more tempted to rush ahead and move towards a grand opening too soon? Or would you be more likely to lag behind this approach, taking your time to do things carefully and potentially losing momentum? Given your answer, you'll want to consider some strategies for checking your natural instincts against this plan. I hope today's time has been meaningful for you. There's a really big journey ahead, but it's a worthwhile one. The people you're called to reach matter, and every bit of prayer and preparation is of immense value. Thank you for saying yes to the invitation God has given. My prayer is that this process isn't just a structure for your church, but spaces in which you encounter the power of God on a personal level as well. Grace and peace to you.
Thanks, Jason. Your first of 2 assignments for this week is a brief assignment based on the reflection prompt that Jason gave you. And when you're ready, you can head over to the second video for this week, which is all about stage 1.